and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. Today I am going to start answering some questions that I've received from people, and I think these questions are quite important and quite interesting, and they might help you to decide either what instruments to play or what kind of music to learn. So I want to take them one by one as I have received them. And the first question that comes up once in a while, in fact somebody asked me just the other day, should you play piano or learn to take piano lessons before you learn any other instrument? In other words, should you be taking piano lessons as you are studying another instrument, or should you learn piano before you start another instrument? Now, I feel very blessed because I came from a very musical family, and we played many instruments. And I did take 3 years of piano lessons and then switched to the woodwinds. Now, 3 years of piano lessons doesn't make me a particularly good pianist, but it gave me a lot of understanding of piano scales, chords, and so forth. But my quick answer to the question of should you play piano before you study another instrument or during the time that you study another instrument, my answer is there's no need to do it unless you want to. I was advantaged to do it, and I do use keyboards a lot, either posters of keyboards like I have here or actual small keyboards as I have over here, because I find in teaching music, if you know things about the piano and where notes appear on the piano, you have a much better understanding of the music. But it's not necessary for you to play piano before you play anything else. Now, I have a theory, and the theory is this. Most people who are musically gifted, their parents were, their grandparents were, other relatives in the family were. So what you're seeing is that a lot of musical talent is something that you have inherited. But you've inherited not only, and this is where my theory begins, not only have you inherited the musical ability, but I think innately within you, you are drawn to a certain class of instruments to play. I played piano for 3 years, but my heart was not in the piano. I actually wanted to play woodwinds. And I can remember when I was very young, too young to play anything, too young to take lessons on anything, my mother asking me, what would you like for Christmas? And I said, I want a toy saxophone. And every year, give me a toy saxophone. I want saxophone. I was drawn not only to the music, but I was drawn to the woodwinds. And I think that if you are musically gifted, you will be drawn not only to the class of instruments or not only to the music because you love the music and you want to play, but I think you will be drawn to a class of instruments. Some people will always want to play violins. Some people will always want to do guitars. Some people will always want to do drums. Myself, I always wanted to do the woodwinds. And I think this is as innate in you as the fact that you want to do music to begin with. But there is an advantage of knowing piano. You see, if you're learning woodwinds, if you're learning brass, you can't do the things that a piano can do. You can't play chords. And so it's important for you to understand the nature of music, where things are on a keyboard, so that you will know and understand music better. It won't affect the way that you play. When you study music, you will study the instrument that you are going to play, but you're not going to necessarily study anything else. And I think with woodwinds or brass, it's a mistake not to bring in a keyboard, because where you cannot do certain things on those instruments, you can see the ranges of the instruments and where they are. If you take a look, well, let me show you this first, and then I'm going to show you the chart behind. If you're playing a woodwind, this is going to be low C. This is as low as most of the woodwinds can get. Now, the saxophone can get down to a B flat, so it's like a step further. But the low C is the basic note that they go to. And the recorders and the flutes and the upper register of the clarinet, they all go to C as the low C. And if you see it on a staff, this is where you see it. Now, I've pointed this out before, but it will be called, in a music book, it will be called low C. And the reason that it's called low C is for woodwind instruments, most of them, it's as low as you can get. but it's not really low C when you consider all the notes below it. There are a lot of notes that you can't play on the woodwinds that go below that low C. You can go from C up, and that's really called middle C. If you're in a piano, this is middle C, and you can go from C all the way up. However, you can't go below it. So this is called low C to the woodwinds because it's as low as most of the instruments can get. Some get a little bit further down. The clarinet has a whole another register down there. But if you're talking about one register of the clarinet, it goes down to that C. Then it starts another register at B. So one register of the clarinet, the flutes, the saxophones, the recorders, basically go to C and up. And on the staff, it's read C and up. However, on a piano, there are a lot more notes underneath it. I can't speak for a lot about the brass. I can't speak a lot about the stringed instruments, the guitars, the violins. I suspect that they go a lot lower. But the woodwinds, which is what I'm a specialist in, it's basically from C on up. Now let me just show you another chart. We won't do all of it. It's hard to catch in the camera. But this has 84 keys. This keyboard has 84 keys in it. However, a regular piano has 88 keys. This would be the middle C right here. So if you're talking woodwinds, you're talking C up to the next C, which is going to be right here, up to the next C, and then up to the last C. And the piano, you've got about 4 octaves of Cs from the middle C on up. And then when you get down here, you've got a lot of other lower notes. And the woodwinds can't play that. Now, the tragedy, I think, of the way that music construction is done is that if you're playing, say, flute, saxophone, or any of the woodwind instruments that don't go below C, you play what the woodwind can do. You learn how to play what the instrument can play. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong in that. You learn how to play it. But you never learn anything about anything else. You don't see where that middle C is because no one ever tells you. I took music lessons for most of my life. I've studied music for most of my life, and I've taught music for most of my life. On the many, many years that I actually learned woodwinds, and this is where my focus was, it was woodwinds, I did not have one single woodwind teacher that used a keyboard in teaching me saxophone, clarinet, flute, or other woodwind instruments. They just didn't do it. They didn't do it because they were teaching me to play what the instrument could do. But what I lacked, and I'm not complaining about the music teachers. I had very excellent music teachers. I had very excellent instruction. But what I lacked was being able to see how it fit in with all the other instruments and all the other notes that are available that I wouldn't be able to play on a woodwind instrument. Now, the tragedy of that is that you're missing something. It's like you're looking at the moon because you can see the moon. The moon seems closer and missing all of the stars, you see. See what you're missing. Does it make a difference? It makes a difference in certain situations. It makes a difference if I want to join a quartet, or if I want to write music, or if I want to play in a trio, and we have all different instruments. Let's supposing I play in a quartet. We have a flute, that might be myself. We have a violin, a piano, and let's say a bass viol or a violin. They're all different ranges. They cover all different spectrums. If you can consider this to be like a spectrum, they cover all different spectrums. If I'm playing the flute, I will be going from middle C on up. Actually, I can get that note there, which is the highest C. But the violin, the bass, the trumpet, if there is one, the trombone, if there is one, a lot of times French horns are in small groups too, they get a whole different range. I don't see that, unless I have some understanding of it. So I think that it's very, very, very important if you are teaching woodwind instruments and if you are teaching brass that you give a whole perspective. Like, for example, here is the circle of fifths. I'm not going to go over it really, but the circle of fifths explains how the keys are. You go up by fives. You start at C. This has no sharps and no flats. The key of C has no sharps or flats. C, D, E, F, G. That's the first key with one sharp. G, A, B, C, D. This is the second key of two sharps. D, E, F, G, and A. The third key with three sharps. And then you have E, B, F, C sharp. You go all the way up. How can I know that? How can I see it? How can I see how the notes are related to one another? I can do it on a keyboard. Now you might be able to do it on a harp because their strings are like piano strings in a certain way. You might be able to do it on other instruments, but keyboard, it's just so plain and laid out. And if I'm going to be teaching woodwinds, I'm not going to be carrying a harp with me. Now, I taught at a fine arts center for 9 years. I was a woodwind specialist, and I always taught in an area in the school that had a keyboard, that actually had a piano. But when I was playing or teaching in an area where there was no piano available, I usually brought a small keyboard, something like this, because you can see things on that. Now with the circle of fifths, you can just figure out where the keys are and where they are, the flats to the left, the sharps to the right, and the minor keys and the bass notes to the left on the keyboard and the treble on the right. So you can see all of that. You can't see it on a woodwind because you can't play it. And I think it's a tragedy not to get that experience, but I also don't think that it's necessary to take piano lessons to do it. I think that an instructor should know enough about the piano, and that doesn't mean that he's going to be a great piano player. He doesn't have to be a great piano player. But I think that a teacher of children, a teacher of anyone who's doing woodwinds or brass, they should have access to explain things and show people things. Now, for example, if I'm going to take my recorder and I'm going to play a B flat, I'll play the B first. And then I play the B flat, and flats, as you know, go down a half a step. And sometimes I'll add another couple of fingers because it makes that flat a little bit deeper. See how much that changes? And if I lift these two fingers up, you can see the difference. B, a B flat kind of, a B flat definitely. Now, how would I show them what a B flat does and where it is? If you look at the recorder, there's two spaces between the B and that flat, and if I really want to get it flat, I add two more fingers, and there's a space between the fingers of the right hand. Does that clearly show that the B flat is 1/2 step down? Well, you can explain it, you can see it on the instrument, but it's much, much easier just to take a look at the keyboard and say, here's your C, here's your B, and here's your B flat. See how close they are, the C and the B flat. That C and B is really only a 1/2 step. There's no black key in there. So the C and the B flat. And it repeats in different octaves. Here's the C, here's the B flat, okay? And we could go down from that to a lower octave, and you could get a C and a B flat. If I say, you know, you can play 6 notes of the scale fairly easily. And what I teach kids to do is B, A, G, F, E, D. I say play Bagfed, B-A-G-F-E-D. Now where is it on the keyboard? Depends upon your octave. B, A, G, F, E, D. And then B, A, G, F, E, D. The same thing repeated, and it's repeated all down the line. So it's important to be able to see what you're talking about. If I'm going to play a G sharp, let me use this instrument again. The G is 3 fingers and the thumb hole. You get it by half holing, but where is it on the piano? Well, here is the G, that's the closest to me, and the G sharp right here, which is the same as the A and A flat. It's the same key. It becomes an entonic note. Now, I've done a special class on entonic notes. It's when the sharp of one note is the same as the flat of another note. They happen to hit the same black key. It's going to be the black key that gets it. And they have the same pitch. But in one piece of music, it's a flat, and another piece of music, it's a sharp. So how can I show that? Right here, G sharp, A flat. The A goes down a half a step, the G is raised a half a step, and that makes it a sharp. When the A goes down a half a step, that makes that a flat. So you can see there are just a lot of things that you can learn, or you can see on a piano, and you don't have to be a great pianist to do it. You just have to understand some concepts. So I went through years and years and years of playing an instrument, or all kinds of instruments, and never seeing it. Now I was fortunate. I'd had 3 years of piano lessons, so I could envision in my mind a lot of things. But I think for most students, they're not going to play piano before they play anything else, and neither should they, because I really feel that if a child wants to play the guitar, let them play the guitar. Let them play what they want. If they want violin, let them play violin. Don't force them to play something before they learn what they really want. Now, should they play 2 instruments? Well, there's no reason why they can't if they're interested and if they want to. And what difference this is going to make if you're teaching a child or teaching an adult a clarinet or a saxophone or a flute or whatever instrument that you're teaching them, if you can show them where all the notes are and how the notes relate to each other and how chords relate to each other. Like, for example, if I'm going to play a major chord, I'll play a C major chord. But what if I play the minor chord? I'm going to flatten that one. You flatten the third one. So you hear a guitarist playing a chord, or you hear a pianist playing a chord, major or minor. And how are they going to know the difference? A woodwind can't play a chord. They can only play one note at a time. A piano can play as much as their fingers can stretch for. But a brass player or a woodwind can only play one note at a time. But it may take 8 or 9 fingers to play that one note. However, if you're doing piano, it's one note, one finger. So you get a chance to see all of that. And I think students need to see that, both students, children, and adults. They really need to see it, because that gives them a firm grasp. It's not going to change the way you play the instrument. It's not going to change the quality of the instruction that they're getting. They're probably getting very good instruction. They're learning to play well, but it gives them a whole grasp of what's going on if they can see a keyboard and how while the notes are on it, and that's the reason that I do it. But I wouldn't suggest that a person play piano before they play anything else. I did, but I just happened to be fortunate from being from a musical family. But at any rate, it's not necessary to do it, but it is necessary to show them things. And so I think that that's important. It'll be very important if you get to the level of playing where you want to join a quartet and you're having different instruments play. It's handy to know what their ranges are. If you're writing music, it's critical. You just have to know what their ranges are so you can write within the scope of what they can play. You always have to keep music within the scope of what the instrument is capable for. It would be very important if you were going to conduct a group, because if you're conducting the group, you're conducting off a musical score, and it's going to have the parts of every single player. So in the musical score, which is music, it has every single part written out, and you're going to see all the different parts written out. You're going to need to know what those ranges are, how the instruments blend together. So it is important, not so much in the playing of the instrument, but in understanding the full grasp of music. So should an instrument, and I'm going to answer the second question as we're getting low on time, should a person play more than one instrument? I think it completely depends upon whether you want to do it, whether you have the time to put into it, whether it's important if you can access another instrument or buy another instrument. If you're going to play violin and you want to play piano, fine. What you're going to have to watch for is embouchure problems. If you have an embouchure, like for the flute, you may not be able to switch to a trumpet or a brass. Brass should not play woodwinds, and woodwinds should not play brass instruments, because the embouchures are just enough different that you're going to weaken the embouchure for your main instrument. So if I play, and I'm going to do it on the bass because I haven't had this is the bass at tenor. There's no trouble in me switching between that bass and, let's say, the sassoon flute. The keys will be different, of course. There's no difficulty in playing the bass and the C melody. The embouchures aren't so different that it's going to be a problem. But if I were to play a brass instrument, then the embouchure is so different that it's going to weaken my embouchure for the woodwinds, and I won't be able to do it. Now, a lot of people play, if you're woodwinds, you play sax, clarinet, and flute. And I do as well. I have trouble going from the saxophone to the flute, because I'm going to show you just, I brought a piccolo, but the embouchure is different. You put it up to your mouth and you blow across it. That's a lot different than putting an instrument in your mouth. So you're going to may have some problems there. So you do have to give consideration as to whether your embouchure is going to be able to take it, whether you have the time to invest in it, whether you love it enough to do more than one, and what kind of time considerations there are. I mean, when you say, should you play more than one instrument, and I have about 180 and play most of them, so I may be the wrong person to ask. But I think outside of the financial considerations, the time considerations, and particularly the embouchure, those are the three things you need to consider. But mainly, if you love it and you want to do it, but don't do it if it's going to mess up your embouchure. So that's what I would tell you about that. I'm going to continue with this next time, and we'll continue on with the questions I have been asked. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're learning from it, and please join me next time.